do you want to go and tell us how you came, like how you started on this project and how you had to like take the steps toward finally having like a really wide suite of AI products?
First of all, good morning. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here. We started on the journey. When you look at AI or machine learning, actually our journey started with machine learning, to be honest, rather than AI, which seems to be artificial intelligence. In its true sense, I'm not sure that we're there yet, but there is a lot of hype, Mark, I would agree. But with machine learning, we thought a lot of the repetitive tasks, the stuff you used to do, could be put onto a computer, and as the machine learns, it could get significantly better. Accuracy rates up, the variety of questions it could answer could increase significantly, and so on. So we started with the call center, both in, we had internal call centers, and we had the customers' call center. So we embarked on both for two very different reasons. One was to improve the quality of service we provide to clients, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure the organization understands what machine learning and AI was. So at the same time, we embarked on the internal call center, because I think it's quite important to bring stuff along that you demonstrate what some of these capabilities are. Because when you do sit back and you read the newspaper, you listen to Bloomberg, or you watch news clips and whatever, it can feel quite daunting. And as a bank employee for 25 years and so on, you hear AI and you feel lost, right? What is the next for me as an employee? So we did for the, let me explain a little bit deeper. For the internal thing, in that chart, we had a man-based call center, where the people at the call center either answer the phone, if you're a staff member and you have a query, my kid is not feeling well, am I entitled to some leave? I would like to study, does the bank provide some assistance? I'm getting married, can I have some time off, and so on, right? There's a bunch of queries, right, that you get from employees. We had people that manned the phones from about 8:30 in the morning to about 6 p.m. And in addition to calls, emails. We used to get a lot of emails with staff asking questions to this calls. It wasn't a call center, but the support desk. When we put it onto the chat box, we put it on an app. So now it's in everyone's mobile phone, and it works 24/7. So you can ask those questions and get immediate answers any time of the day or night, I think. Consequently, after 6 months of launching it, the main center is no longer there, and the robot provides answers to a variety of HR-related questions 24/7. We took it one further, and we said, if you're a branch staff, you need, banks are complex, and there's an awful lot of compliance requirements, policies, things you need to remember, products, a variety of products, and each product has got different features and so on. So it takes really an awful lot of remembering things, right, when you're servicing customers. So what we felt, because of the complexity and so on, and learning from mistakes, because we answer questions wrongly to customers, we provide the wrong advice and so on, we felt that we can put, again, in the hands of employees, the power of the info that we have, policies, products, descriptions, and so on. We put on the chat box as well. So you just ask the bot, what are the features of this product? Can I open an account for a 5-year-old? Can I do this? Can I send money overseas? What is the process? And some of the things that you do every day in the branch, there's no need for a chat box. You remember, because you do it repeatedly, and it's stuck with you. Where it's really become valuable is in the things that happen in the branch, but don't happen very often. So you don't tend to remember. So having something where you can ask, get an answer immediately, has been of great value. Consequently, customer service is much better, error rates have dropped, and so on. On the call center, for customers' call center, we actually worked with IBM Watson, was to be able to put products onto the chat box where you can chat to the bot. And as you I would like my annual fee waived on the credit card. What do I need to do as a customer? The chatbot will provide you that. I got this, I want to get something else. Does the bank help with that kind of product and whatever? Again, 24/7. When we first launched it, the accuracy rate was 30-40%. Within about 3 or 4 months, the accuracy rate was in the mid-60s. Within about 7 or 8 months, accuracy rates now is in the 90s because the machine has learned, right? And the variety of questions and products that you could answer has expanded. We also built some intent into the chat bot to figure out customers' intent. Because when they do chat, they might say, they start off very nicely, but then the words start changing. And the intent, you could feel the conversation is going south. And because the conversation is going south, we better intervene to stop, from something that customer service not being there, right? From something bad happening. So in that instance, actually, we transfer it to a manned operator. So that then the person intervenes into the call to take over the call, because the bot is able to pick up intent, right? The mood, if you like, has changed. Similarly, when a customer is chatting, they might be inquiring, does Hong Kong Bank do housing loans? What is your interest rates? And so on, right? It is enough questions where you get the intent that the customer is really looking for a housing loan. It's not just shopping around, he's really looking for something. Even there, we send it to a live sales agent, because we feel now taking over might be the appropriate time and so on. So if you can see, it's a combination. It's not just the chatbot on its own, it's also getting that technology paired with people to hopefully drive greater customer satisfaction.
So it's more a partnership between human and robot in that sense. Thank you.
Yes.
And we've already also heard from IBM and now from Hong Leong about all the applications for AI. But I want to go to you, Surina. How can smaller companies, or especially SMEs, how can they also adopt AI? Especially considering the costs, considering whether applying this will be worth it, considering the scale.
So first and foremost, I think it's a matter of realizing the power of it. I think most people don't realize that AI is actually not a multiplier. AI is actually it provides exponential power. Because if you think about what we just talked about just now, you take humans out, and then because we have to sleep, we have to eat,
Correct. Sick leave, annual leave.
Exactly, and so it provides a multiplier effect. But the thing is, most people, this topic, and as well as digital transformation in general, it's such an overwhelming topic, you don't even know where to start, and you're actually afraid to take the first step. And so I think with a lot of the smaller companies that we have in our country, it's really all about taking that first step, gaining your understanding and going forward with it. I am a big believer. I love everything that Caroline said earlier. Digital transformation, at the end of the day, is actually human transformation. Because the technology part is actually easy, very easy. The human transformation part, i.e. this willingness to actually take that first step, being receptive to change, that's the part that's tough. And because along with change, then you need to change processes, you need to upskill, all these other things. So digital transformation is human transformation. The other thing I want to actually build upon what she said earlier, the role and importance of data. Once people fully appreciate that data is actually what helps you drive good decisions, because what we just described just now, it's you're processing all that data to actually drive good decisions, then that would actually help in this adoption process. So the better businesses are at making data-driven decisions, the better off they'll be and the more value they're going to be. And then that's what's going to help people overcome the whole, oh my God, I have to make this big investment, but they're all good investments. In the future, well, actually not in the future, like today, people say data is currency, data is oil. I mean, people realize how important data is, but when we really embrace Industry 4.0 is really coming to the realization that data is oxygen. Like you cannot actually function good businesses without data. If you think about how dependent we are on our smartphones, that's because we're dependent on the data that resides on there, the connectivity and everything. We don't make any decisions anymore without really checking first. That's why it's important. So data is oxygen. Those three things I would highlight.
Do you have any success stories working with SMEs that you can share with us?
Yeah, in fact, 2 days ago I was actually with BAM Pembangunan, and they were talking about some companies that were actually coming to them to just start the conversation around. Now they actually have they're trying to so because it starts basically first with coming back to the point around a journey. First, you actually have to make sure that you're data ready. You build your data foundation, and then you're starting to actually think about how you leverage data. And so we're starting to actually see a lot of companies come and talk about how do you actually digitize some of these processes. We were actually with a company that makes burgers, actually not me, Bang from Bayonan, and they were saying they're actually using technology to actually digitize that process. Once you actually start realizing and getting comfortable with getting all this data, then you'll start to realize to really leverage that, you'll start to need artificial intelligence. But you have to actually go on your data journey first and make sure that your data foundation, your data IQ, and your data readiness and everything is solid so that you can do that, that AI jump.
The sense I'm getting is that fear of AI seems to be like the first barrier that you have to get over. And I thought it was really interesting, Domenic, that you introduced an AI-powered chat for HR first, for internal first. Was that, what was the reasoning behind that?
Well, you know, we all talk about it is a journey. I think even SMEs, the first part I think is digitizing, because if you digitize that, you start creating an awful lot of data. And as part of the digitization, then you have a database. And with that data, then you can bring machine learning or AI to bear. And there is multiple things that we are doing with clients to make sure that they start the digital journey. And then it will be a data and so on. But to us, it was, you know, when we're a 117-year-old company. And there are people that have been with us for a long, long time. And processes, in the last 10 years, there's been a huge amount of change. But prior to that, change was relatively slow, right? So if you started in the bank 25 years ago, there's a good chance for the large part of your career, the world does not change that much. Then you start throwing in digitization journeys, big data, cloud computing, hybrid. You know, there's a language of its own, really. You've got to go back to school just to learn English, forget about coding,
It starts to get overwhelming.
Things. So it does, right? Because and a lot of the stuff you read, it doesn't make it practical either, right? So it becomes very scary. So that's why we thought, the journey is not just about digitizing the front end, the customer-facing thing. The journey is about, we have an ethos that we say digital at the core. If you want to be digital at the core, it has to start with employees. It has to start with our processes. It has to start with the way we work, the way where we sit, you know, the way we collaborate, before you can really embark on the digital customer journeys. Because if you don't, you can do a bunch of things at the front, I feel. But it won't be long-lasting because the rest of the organization is still, yesterday's type of setup, right? Analog. And you can't have analog and digital, right? Sooner or later, the two are it's going to be a break in the middle. That's why, with that realization, we thought we got to start and demonstrate it, right? Demystify it internally first, and then start with a bunch of things with customers. But to be honest, when we said that, then you feel I don't have time. So you can't let me do everything internally, take 3 or 4 years to transform internally, and then I'll start with customers. Yeah, by the time you do that, then the world has changed so much, you can't. So then, you know, you've got to do it in parallel. So when we launched some of the projects, very mindful, but we're doing internal projects as well as external projects. So we've done a bunch of things. Even if you come to the place, we moved offices 2 years ago now, the environment looks significantly different because of the way we want our own internal people to collaborate, you know, to be agile, to come together. We used to have IT department sitting in PJ City, which is about 15 kilometers from here or so. Now they sit, at least the front end, the coders and so on, they sit together with product servicing people so they can collaborate, right? They bring their agility to bear. So again, we made some structural changes, even inside the organization, to bring this thing, you know, demystify it again, right? Bring it together, show that it is possible.
So that's why digital transformation is human transformation at the end of the day, in my mind. It's a change management exercise.
And I was actually very hopeful to hear from Catherine because my bachelor is actually in literature. So I'm very hopeful that I can still survive in this market. But from your point of view, Surina, what is the government doing to make sure that the people who may not have a background in technology, and how do you also address the talent gap so that the Malaysian population also remains competitive?
Yeah, so number one, let me talk about some of the things like we're doing. So my job at MDEC at the end of the day is really to make sure that we mobilize 32.3 million people to move towards this new reality and thrive in this new economy. And so to do that, we are very focused on making sure that whatever it is that we do, we can engage at scale. So therefore, whatever it is that we do, we come from the perspective of it's all about public-private partnerships at the end of the day. And so therefore, in matters of talent, of data adoption, of of skill development. It's all about AI development. It's all about doing it together. So we are working on talent policies right now. We are working on the national data sharing policy right now. We have rolled out the policy on fiberization and connectivity, and these are all things that's required to actually make sure that we have a solid foundation to build upon. We at MDEC, we're also working on the national digital economy policy, which requires all this input to actually do that. We are a big believer that the government's role at the end of the day is to make sure that we set the right conditions to make sure that businesses, in collaboration with the public sector, can thrive together. This afternoon, for example, we're launching something quite exciting. We're calling it the Malaysian Innovation Policy Council, and what that is basically a forum by which industry can come and have dialogue with government, and then we will then take input from that and then deploy action solution teams, like figuring out what papers needs to go up to cabinet, et cetera, so that we can make sure all these things happen. In regards to AI specifically, it's early days for us in terms of making sure that everybody gets organized. Earlier this year, in fact, some people in the room were actually part of our industry discussion workshop, because we're in the process of actually formulating our AI framework. Earlier this year, we've done several trips overseas, actually, to start having conversations to learn from other countries that have actually gone on this journey. We spent time with the Office of AI in the UK, for example, to learn how they go about things.
We have 4 minutes on the clock, and I want to open it up to the floor for any questions. But before that, I want to go back to you, Domenic. There's this idea that, AI is powered by data, but then there's also a danger of data being misused or there being any breaches in the data. What safeguards have you put in place to make sure that everything, like client privacy, is still very much in control?
That's a very good question, and it is a huge concern, right? And data breaches and so on happening on a daily basis, really. So we're putting a lot of emphasis, everything we collect, to make sure it stays quite secure. So there is a bunch of firewalls and access metrics and so on. So limited, right? Only on a need-to-know basis internally, the organization. We're putting sensors in databases to track who goes where, right? To pick up that maybe, right, as an employee, as a CEO of the bank, I don't normally go to this database. Why am I going there today, type of thing? And alert somebody and have somebody take a look at it and say, is that the right, the right access? Why is this employee coming to that particular part of the, the infrastructure? Externally, we ask for consent, right? We try and get an awful lot of customers agreeing for us to, A, to collect the data, then B, to be able to use it to insights and so on, drive context from it so that we can make better offers. There is a number of customers that say, no, I'm not interested in that at all, right? You collect my data for the decisions that you need to make, but beyond that, I don't want my data to be used. So we're putting processes in place to make sure that we collect that intent from the customer, and then we protect their privacy and don't reuse the data. There is a bunch of policies around. We can only keep it for as long as we need, and when the data is no longer needed, it gets deleted. And then the delete process is not as easy as getting a thing and throwing it away, right? The whole deletion process goes through a thorough process to make sure it's deleted properly, can be accessed permanently after that, and so on. So there is, if you like, there is a bunch of things around the data to make sure that we keep it as secure as we can, and we only use it within the consent that the customer has given us.
I would actually add to that also. We also need to make sure people realize that cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
Actually, if we look at cybersecurity cases, I think 40–50% of them have initiated internally, right, with some employee, either been lax, clicked on an email, and clicked, or participated in the data theft and so on. So that's 100% correct. It's not just the responsibility of the technology guys or the cybersecurity. We have a cybersecurity division, but that's them to provide the framework, the policies, do some of the monitoring that I was just talking about, where you're right. It is everybody, including the people that allow people to walk into the premises.
Right, and so it's because everything. So even personally, because it has to be top of mind and part of everybody's DNA. Because systems, we can do what we can to actually to take care of it, but how you interact on your phone, how you handle emails, how savvy people are in terms of you know, fraudsters trying to phish information. So all that are ways that you could actually go in and then affect, you know, your data.
To be extremely effective with data security and cybersecurity, you need employees, you need systems, you need technology, you need the participation of the public and customers.
Exactly.
Because sometimes that's what happens. The customer is the weakest point, unfortunately, because they do get, you know, the stories that they hear, somebody rings you, is very credible, but it's a fraud.
Yeah.
And because it's very credible, they give away their credentials. But doing so, they're compromising our security stance, right? So you're right, actually. It is everybody's concern, and it should be everybody's responsibility.
Thank you. It's very reassuring that like you thought about all of the dimensions. I'm wondering if there are any questions from the floor, please.
Yeah, hi. My name is Sumi. I'm working for Malaysian Airlines. I lead digital transformation, so a lot of the things that you're saying resonate with me. Two things. One's an observation, one's a question. The observation is the challenges we face now from a skills perspective is not really the hard skills. You know, I think the future is such that technologies like AI is going to replace the hard skills. Coding is not going to be relevant anymore because the machine is going to code. But what we lack are people with the creative ability, the logical thinking, the people who are not fearful of failure, for example. And these are the issues that we are facing within our organization, which comes to my second question. So rather than us talking about the spends that companies are going to be making in AI, it's really about the opportunity loss that our customers are facing because companies like us are not doing enough to be better reflective of their behaviors. And AI gives us that opportunity because no man or no person, or no woman, sorry, will be able to be in front of the customer's preference. So, you know, the first part about skill sets, the problem we have in our organization is people don't see the customer pain. They don't reflect on the opportunity loss. And then they don't look for the solutions because they don't have the creative thinking, the logical thinking, the fear of failure, the ability to do new things, to be entrepreneurial. Like these are the real long-term issues in this market. So, you know, I think from a government perspective, 14 years ago, I worked in MDEC. So, you know, I have a public service line. But I think the issue now is for the government to take a longer-term view. I've also worked in an SME that adopted AI, and the real ignition of that was we understood what the opportunity loss was. So we used Amazon, we applied some machine learning to our data, and we saw an 18% uplift on how we could sell services. And this happened within 2 days. And the third day, we turned on Amazon AI, for example, and we're running. So
see, that is a great point, because what you just described there is framing, okay? Because most of the time you think of, I mean, it's all about just framing what it is that we're trying to move towards. So an example of framing, right? Because right now you can come across people and say, you need to digitally transform, and then they start thinking, it's because transformation is such a big word. But if you just go to them and say, look, wouldn't you like to be better, faster, cheaper, and deliver a better client experience for your customers? Wouldn't you like to do that? I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Then yes, let's use technology to do that, because you can actually do blah, 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 blah. So then that gets people over that hump, because at the end of the day, I come back to it's human transformation. And so organizations that need to mobilize the entire organization and get a better perspective of the customer, it's really all about leadership needs to do more to just find ways to get that customer closer. So internal sharing of what the customer looks like, you know, getting people to talk more. You're not going to have your internal, you know, your coders speak to them, but you could have customers come in, people talk about that. Just somewhere find ways, because you have to actually get closer. You cannot design solutions without fully understanding the customer. You mentioned Amazon. That's the heart of what they do. They really understand their customers. The entire organization understands the customer, and then they can design solutions for that.
What about the second point in terms of the talent gap?
Yeah, so the talent gap. So what you described there, because last Friday, for example, we had a sharing session with industry. We had 20 CEOs of tech companies, and we were talking about challenges, demystifying, et cetera, et cetera. What you talked about, we talked about as well. And so skill development is key, but applying that, all these other critical thinking skills and so forth came at the forefront as well. We talked about solutions that work. We know that there are solutions that work. For example, identifying, using competitions, for example, is a good way to actually stimulate people to think, right? And so what we're going to be working on is to find ways to scale. And so we...
If I may add, I think the traditional way of upskilling, reskilling people might also be a little bit out of date. You know, with classroom-based training and so on, right? So over this coming weekend, on the Saturday and Sunday, as an example, we want to hire people that A, can code, B, can bring some UX, UI type of skills. You need people in the social sciences that understand people intent, context, and so on, right? The softer skills that you were talking about. So over Saturday and Sunday, this coming Saturday and Sunday in our office, we're running a hackathon. We've got, I think, a couple hundred people, right? Shalish coming over. Generally younger people, not necessarily, but generally younger people. We give them problems that we think, there's a customer problem. We try and box it in. We give them 48 hours to come up with a solution. During the process, we're actually interviewing.
Yeah.
Because it's a different way than to discover skills or capabilities than the tradition. Send me a resume, I do a face-to-face thing or whatever. And we did that about 6 months ago. So it's one of the things we want to do regularly. We did hire some people from that. So hopefully over the coming weekend we'll be able to hire other people. So I think even as leaders, right, we've got to rethink the way we go about training people, the way we recruit people, the way we position the organization for learning.
Yep.
Thank you. There was another question at the back.
I think we ran out of time. Mark is making all sorts of signs at the back.
Okay, just one more question. Can you tell us 3 things that Malaysia needs in order to be able to compete with the West? Domenic.
Well, we live in a globalized world, right? In many ways, I think that this AI thing is happening probably quicker in this part of the world than elsewhere. The digitization thrust, as far as I can see, is actually taking hold in Asia, and it will continue. And this big data thing, I don't think we're just waking up now.
Yeah.
I think we've been at it for some time.
And I would add, my one thing, actually not 3, is just to tell our story. There's so much goodness, there's so much opportunities, there's so much talent in the market. We're just not telling our story the best way that we can.